So we're beyond the halfway point now, right? So yeah, so like there was a little shift in gear last week into the shamanic part of the course, and we're going to do a little bit more of that this week. So that then preps you for, some of the shadow work that we're going to do after the shamanic module. Okay. So I hope you have enjoyed kind of just even contemplating the energy around the shamanic practices and that, and most of you have already given your feedback about the audio. Today we're going to try out a couple of different things. I'm going to show you a video of some channeling that the Tibetan Oracle does. So I'm just going to show you a short video of that, and it's actually got 3 different Tibetan channels, so not just the Oracle. And I'm also going to introduce you to some more kind of traditional shamanic drumming, a traditional shamanic drumming track, and then leave you to some with some shamanic drumming tracks in the group to play with for the rest of the week if you want to. All right, so that's kind of like our main emphasis for today. So I'm going to jump straight into the slides again. They're very, very short, and then we can, oh no, hang on, what's it going to do? No, I think I'm going to show you the ritual first. So I'm going to show you the channeling first, and then I'll jump straight into the slides. So just bear with me and I'll share my screen for the Tibetan spirits and audio. It's quite a poor quality video and it's quite pixelated. I suspect it's being videoed of a film. I think that's probably why it's so bad. But it's actually, I've got a couple of better ones, better quality ones, but that's actually a really nice little, encapsulated, the 3 different Tibetan channels and spirits, and kind of and some of the ceremony that happens, which is why I want to show it to you. So later on, I'll in the group, I'll give you some links that are a little bit, a little bit different times, different eras. That one's a bit of it's been used to be politicized, which is what that writing was coming up. It was actually trying to politicize the use of the oracle of Tibet by the Dalai Lama as evidence that he was worshipping spirits, which is not actually what the role of the oracle is. So it's it's just a political, a bit of propaganda by another group who wants to be able to worship spirits other than the Buddha, if you like, in Buddhism. However, the film itself is actually a really good film, and I don't, because it's a film, it's probably not available elsewhere on YouTube apart from that. So that's why I wanted to show it to you. So just to give you some background on that one. Yeah, if you're interested in that, but you'll see how there's a lot of, there's certainly a lot of breathing and breath work going on in terms of holding the channel. You couldn't hear any audio. Okay, you might need to you got your earphones in? Yes. Yeah. You'll get some links. So yeah, could you hear that he was kind of like, there was a lot of kind of like sucking in of the breath? Yeah. So that's really part of the channeling process for the Nishang Oracle. And his purpose is really to give more political guidance than spiritual guidance. He's actually more of a political figure for Tibet than a spiritual figure. He kind of crosses the boundary because he speaks to the spiritual figure, but his purpose is a bit more political. Which is why he kind of has a figure, more of a governance figure. But they have these very traditional costumes, which are so heavy, so heavy that he needs, about 5 different people to be able to hold these costumes and to walk around with them and make sure he doesn't fall over, because he's, doing these prostratings and these bowing and part of the channeling, and he could literally just topple over because the costumes are so heavy. And like he has people mopping his brow and all that sort of stuff while he's in the channeling process, partly because the costumes are so heavy. But it's a really long tradition of going into trance, shamanic trance, and bringing out wisdom, which is really essentially, any form of shamanic journey, involves an altered state of consciousness, going on a quest to bring back wisdom. All right, so that's why I want to show that to you. Is like, yes, he might not be, he's still in the same room and he's in a channeling state, but that's what essentially the purpose of that channel is for, is to go and bring back wisdom and then give the Dalai Lama some messages that might be helpful in the kind of political spiritual organization of the Sangha, I guess, more than anything. Did anything come up for any of you that you wanted to ask before we move on? Because I might be shifting gears in a moment, other than to show you some more videos of that you can look at in the group. But did you have a question there, Sybil?
Well, what came up for me, it's they have a tradition for which these things are appropriately accepted.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that in Western culture.
Yes.
You have the support of trance work and channel work. And so it leaves such a void for those of us that do this to actually know how to place ourselves and how to be accepted and where to go with it. Whereas in traditions like this, it just feels like it's just accepted. It's revered.
Yes, and it's also normalized.
Normalized, yeah.
And there's actually one of the clips that is a longer clip, and it's a bit more recent, so it kind of is easier to perhaps to follow. There's a very old Tibetan lady who is suddenly inspirited before the Nichang oracle comes out, so just in the process of those kind of crazy horns and the drums and the bells and stuff, and she gets up and she wants to move, and all the monks try and hold her back down and push her back down, you know, as this crazy old lady, you know, but she's just inspirited, and she just like is filled with this powerful force that throws all these monks off her, and you know, and she starts to you know, express herself in her own way of being inspirited by the energy. And that's actually, you know, in a lot of the, because I studied shamanic trance in different cultures, or trance states in different cultures, and that's actually quite a common thing to happen in Africa, Sudan, all these kinds of places. That India, women are often, you know, infused by this or inspirited by this trance state, and quite frequently that they're then they're not necessarily labeled mad as they would be in our culture, but they are pushed to the margins. Now in Sudan, they actually ended up creating this really safe container for these women to actually be able to enact these spirits that they were being embodied by. And actually all these spirits were in some way, shape or form expressing their dissatisfaction with their domestic and social status, right? But they were contained within, this is what the women do in ceremony and have nothing to do with the men, and it's their own process. And so there was an outlet for women's dissatisfaction, let's say. In Sudan, they figured out a way, because they couldn't probably maintain the social order without giving women an outlet. And so, you know, because it really was popping up. In India, more, it was often widows who were being imbibed with the spirits of their husbands, and then they were actually being consigned more to the mad state, for example. But it's actually so many cultural examples of these kinds of things happening. And it's, you know, it's a great observation, Sybil, that actually in Tibet, they actually have a structure, you know, that allows this, you know, probably just for men, however.
Yep.
Or no, not necessarily, because there is one female oracle, actually. That's what was shown at the beginning. So, so no, there is actually a status for women, you know, infused with spirit as well. So, yeah.
Do you have any stats on how many, like across Western culture, how much of this is actually starting to come out? Or like, is there a fairly strong phenomenon of oracles and channels and things that are just,
yeah, you know, I mean, I think back to Cryon, you know, Lee Carroll, who channeled Cryon. He's been doing it for 23 years. And that was really unusual when he started doing that. Now, obviously, there was Madame Blavatsky and all of that in the Theosophical movement in London in the, what was that, the late 1800s, I think. But in terms of what we know of like modern channels, I probably would say, you know, other than the Blavatskys and the Theosophicals, I would say it's probably Lee Carroll was one of the first. I mean, there was obviously also, what was his name? Edgar Cayce's, but he was also with the Theosophical movement. So I think there was a bit of a jump, you know, there was that sort of Theosophical society movement that happened, and then there was a gap, and it's probably only been in the last 25 years or so that channels have become more common, which is like it's a blink of an eye. Can anyone think of anyone earlier than Carol but later than the Theosophicals? I don't think I can.
I'm not sure about the exact timeframes. When were the Theosophicals?
I think it was late 1800s and through the early 1900s. So that was Edgar Casey around then.
So that's my great grandmother was a respected channel and psychic in England, and she was on the police protected list because she would assist them with missing persons and stuff. So that was the only reason they let her practice.
Wow.
So that's why I just wanted to know the times, because I was like, well, I might know someone from before that, but it would have only just been before, like it would have been around.
Would have been at the tail end of the Theosophicals more. Yeah,
I think so. I wouldn't have been surprised if they were involved, to be honest.
Yes, no, I would say so, because it was a very powerful. I mean, I've been to the Theosophical Society building in London, and it's it's still today a really important part of that history. Yeah, that's fascinating, Lou. That's an amazing little bit of family history. And she was on the police protected list. Was that to make sure that nobody harmed her? Is that because she was a channel?
No, they wouldn't shut her down. So like if anyone came along and tried to shut her down, it was like, no, we look after this lady. She's helpful.
And how did she get to be protected? Because she helped the police. Is that right?
I don't even know. Like, I don't know the whole story. My great grandmother isn't even alive now, but I should ask my nan more about it but it's run the whole way down through my family. So it's just been a thing that happens in our family. But the women in my family are much better at channeling advice than taking it. So isn't that from the way?
Thanks, Lou. Anyone else have anything to add or contribute? Yeah, Stephanie, go ahead.
I just wanted to share that I was massively triggered watching that video, that my nervous system's just gone crazy. So there's obviously some past life thing there or some current life thing there. I don't know. I have to sit with it, but I just wanted to share in case anyone else was feeling like they were as well, and that they might have felt alone or something. So
it apart from that strong possibility, just even the kind of the sound, those horns, and that are a little can be triggering, have been triggering for people, and it certainly doesn't fit us culturally, those kinds of sounds either. So apart from it just being a bit blary, it also might just not really find a place to sit.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't the sound. It was the image of people being out of control. I think it was the feeling of that they were completely out of their conscious body and being completely in spirit. And for some reason that the thought of that really triggered me. Yeah,
and that's actually a really good point, Stephanie. Is the shamanic way. We talk about straddling two worlds at the same time. So you're actually holding, fairly much ordinary, whatever we would call ordinary reality, as well as journeying through non-ordinary reality, right? And that's actually the art of being a shaman, is to be able to hold both realities, to be able to stay in duality of that. And I think that's exactly what you're saying there, is that what's showing up there in the Tibetan clip is much more a loss of ordinary reality and a complete absorption into non-ordinary reality. Which isn't what we're aiming for. Great point. It's definitely just the sound and the lack of sort of cultural familiarity, and the kind of intensity of it can be a bit much for some people. So by all means, you know, if you are curious about looking at the other clips that I'll post, turn the sound. In fact, I did that last night when I was looking through the clips. I turned the sound off, not because the sound was bothering me, but because I actually wanted to watch the trance happening without getting distracted by all of the other bells and drums, right? So, you know, that's another way of doing it, right? Is if you really want to watch something without, I mean, obviously the whole, which is what we're doing in today's class, is all about ritual and ceremony. So all of that is really important for the ritual process and the ceremonial state. And that's actually what supports the altered state, is all of that ceremonial stuff. But if you're curious just about what's going on in the trance state or what's happening, you could totally just turn off the sound. All right. So as I've mentioned, ritual and ceremony, I think it's a decent opportunity here, place to segue to my presentation. So bear with me and I shall just get the screen. Actually, maybe that's not the right way to do that. Hang on a sec. Hopefully this should work. Now I've just got to make sure I can see my screen. There it is. Okay. Just give me a little thumbs up. Yes, I thought so. I thought I got it right this time. Thanks, Stephanie. Okay, so to orient you to exactly what we're doing today, we're continuing with module 5, which is Shamanic Principles and Practices. And today we're looking at transcendence through ritual and ceremony. Okay. So I'm going to just move this so I can see my screen. Okay. An important factor in shamanic ceremony is the ritual structure itself. Ceremony is a way to transform consciousness through accessing the collective field. And all ritual action points to or represents the mystery, symbolically stating the connection between the divine, the community, and the individual, which you could also think of as the ritual worshipper. Achieving shamanic trance relies on implicit body memory. Trance is thought to be a mixture of both auto-suggestion, which you could probably say is like coming from all those different components of ceremony and ritual, and conditioned reflex, which is something in that somatic memory. So it's the combination of a somatic or an implicit somatic memory and this you know, what's happening in those components of ritual that spark the reflex that can allow somebody to go into trance. So practice, you know, essentially practice and context. The purpose of ritual action is to move towards the sacred and to be transformed in the process. So thinking about that old lady who I was talking about, right? You can see exactly how that came about and why she was so interested in that, why she was so moved by that. She was moving towards the sacred and seeking to be transformed in the process of that. Shamanism doesn't distinguish between the sacred and profane in the same way as organized religions do. For shamanic cultures, the categories of sacred and profane intermingle. They're inseparable and they do not negate each other. Although they recognize a realm of the sacred, they sacralize everyday objects by assigning ritual purpose to them. Shamanic cultures don't dichotomize sacred and therefore the permitted or the good things versus profane things, and which you could say are forbidden or set apart is what I mean by profane objects. Many societies have no words that translate as sacred or profane in quite the same way as we do. And these societies have no recognizable distinction between the sacred and profane in their rituals either. For some Indigenous cultures, the entire world is infused with spiritual importance. Everything. When something has spiritual importance, it is also regarded as sacred. Hence, everything is sacred because nothing is outside of the realm of the sacred, and nothing is ordinary or profane either. There are three fundamental modes of transcendence, so ways of achieving transcendence has been organized into three different modes. The first being awe, wonder, and mystery. The second, ecstasy. And the third, mind and reason. So awe is the essential feature of awe is that we are forced to stop. We're stopped by the beauty of a sunset, the breathtaking view of mountains, the sight of a perfect wave, or the exquisite marvel of a newborn baby. Not all experiences of awesome transcendence are positive, however. We may be struck by the mystery of death, the imponderability of human cruelty, or the destructive power of a tsunami. We stop and allow ourselves to be in the presence of the mystery, the wonder, or the thing of beauty or terror. We are lifted out of the humdrum, the rat race, and for a moment, something beyond breaks in to force a kind of transcendence and awareness of another world. And that something beyond touches us. These experiences are felt senses through our nervous system: sounds, smells, sights, sensations and feelings, and emotions and feelings. And they lift us out of ourselves, out of the busy rushing around over everyday life, to stop and take notice. One thing about an awesome experience is that it's often easier to give in to the experience than to continue. And that's what I mean by forcing us to stop. Ecstasy is heavily reliant on physical and an emotive experience. So activities associated with ecstasy include movement, dancing, singing, cheering, laughing, and crying. Dance, rhythm, and music are common examples of ecstatic transcendence used in a variety of spiritual and religious transitions to induce a trance-like euphoria. Excitement at a sporting event, when the whole crowd roars and everyone cheers a particular player, is a kind of ecstatic transcendence. And this form of transcendence involves a movement from pain to peace, a rhythmic lulling or exciting of feeling the emotions. And the third mode is mind and reason. This is a little harder to conceptualize, but I'll talk you through it. It's logic that carries us on a path we did not plan or devise. So it's a line of reasoning that may take us out of ourselves and connect us with a larger reality we did not create. If you think about a scholar tracking down an insight, chasing it, trying to get it all down before it's lost. Some people can get lost in an argument, in resolving a problem, or in thinking an issue through. So we might call that hyperfocus. Others give themselves over to writing poetry or prose, and that to me really helps the essence of that. This is really a poet's path, or a writer's path, but a poet's path in particular. The mental process of reasoning takes over, and they are lost to other aspects of being, particularly feeling. So another important component of ritual is liminality. Okay, so liminal space is really, really important. To understand that, what we can do is look at the structure of ritual, just the basic structure of ritual. And we can see that it starts with a preliminal phase, which is a separation from our normal everyday life. So therefore we're changing consciousness with intention, right? We're making a decision to move away from our everyday experience, our ordinary experience, and we've made that decision, okay? And that's our changing our consciousness with intention. And then we move into the liminal phase, which is a transition. We get immersed in the realm of the unusual, something, you know, that is beyond our everyday experience and beyond that, right? And so therefore we're adopting an alternative consciousness. So this is a form of, in a way, it's a type of altered state of consciousness, right? We just happen to have a lot more of our, you know, our conscious brainwaves, our alpha and our theta brainwaves, perhaps participating in this, right? We're not in an altered state in the usual sense of the word, i.e. we're not channeling. But here is a really clear example of kind of like the everyday, maybe contemporary context for an altered state is moving into liminal states. And then we have the post-liminal phase, which is a reincorporation of the unusual with your normal life. This is the very, very important part of it. We often might refer to it as integration. Without integration, you don't have the impact on your life and your consciousness that of the, you know, of that immersive experience that you've had. So it transforms your consciousness, right? It's not just a, you know, a one-off intensive weekend experience that, you know, fades away from your memory after some time because you've managed to incorporate it into your world and your life. Just to say, also think about liminality as a period of limbo and ambiguity. Okay, we're not really sure. It's a transitional state between two phases, and individuals often experience this feeling of being betwixt and between, and you'll find that being referred to often in popular culture, you know, films and TV shows and things like that, this sense of being betwixt and between. This is our contemporary way of understanding altered states. All right. The last thing I want to share with you is something that I learned when I was studying Indigenous philosophy at Charles Darwin University. And Gunma is a Yolngu word to describe the meeting and mixing of salt water from the sea and of fresh water from the land. All right. So in Yolngu culture, groups of people can also be referred to as freshwater or saltwater people. So Yolngu express complex ideas and philosophies through metaphors that draw analogies between the flow and character of water, Yolngu kinship relationships, and the human body. Ganma is sometimes used as a metaphor for two-way learning. So not just the meeting and mixing of salt and fresh water, they've taken that to a more philosophical position and said it means two-way learning. Implicit in this two-way process is acknowledging the importance of each person as an essential contributor to the creation of knowledge. And knowledge itself becomes relational and is created in that context of meeting. It doesn't exist before these two people have actually met and interacted, and consequently can't be held by individual people. So here we go. Stop the share. All right. So, yep, that's absolutely fine. Go ahead, Stephanie, question.
Just on that last point about that Ganma, like co-regulation must be kind of tied into that.
I think so, because it involves, and I think we hear about this in other cultures, about this deep listening. right? So it involves being able to sit and deeply listen to the other and feel yourself being reflected in the other as they speak. So here there is some form of co-regulation happening. It's not just listening to them, because you're listening for yourself in them as well, because it's only through that that the co-creation process happens, where both, you know, it's not the creation, that straightforward way of contributing an idea and then someone else contributing an idea, etc., which you might put down to maybe sort of academic practice, right? It's much more of that back and forth, what is emerging between us. And here is that, and that's why, although it's a slightly different concept, it really belongs to that betwixt and between, right? What is emerging in the field between us? What is more than just me and what is more than just you is what is emerging in the field between us. And then that will hold us. That's how I experience of that. So I totally agree with you. It's co-regulation. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts or questions or observations?
I'll just share something.
Mm-hmm.
When I had grandchildren, when my first grandson was born, my daughter wanted to know what I wanted to be called, and I toyed around with tons of things, and what came up was Ganma, moon. So it's totally ringing my bell that I chose something. I didn't know that it meant this, and it's totally just making me come so alive.
Yeah, thank you. That's lovely. I've got goosebumps and shivers, all sorts of things happening too.
I know. Ganma moon, and there it is.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, totally. All right. So we are going to do a little bit of shamanic drumming now. Listen to, you know, a piece of shamanic drumming. And then we're going to spend more time sharing and you know, jumping into being with each other, because that will end the teaching part of the, or you know, my part of the lesson. All right. So let me just refer to my notes here, because my printer wouldn't work last night. So want to just give you a little bit of context about drumming and how it works. Just a very short little bit, but monotonous patterns, and this is why it's going to be quite different to many other drumming tracks that you will find even on YouTube. If you searched shamanic drumming, you will find things that actually sit better with your ears, let's say. They're not monotonous rhythms. They tend to bring in other elements, whereas shamanic drumming, you might have rattles, drums, a few other, or sound, voice, not much more. Okay, so it is going to sound a little different to just, you know, the drumming, even the drumming track audio that I shared with you last week in the main part. However, it's the monotony that really works with inducing a state of trance. Listening to a recording of continuous drumming that runs at 4 to 7 beats per second. So again, it's actually the number of beats per second that is really, really important. For between 15 to 30 minutes can induce shamanic trance. We reckon 20 to 30, but 15 at the very edge of it. So, you know, I might say 20 to 30 minutes really is probably better. I think I will introduce you to something at 13. So you might, 15 minutes, so you might not feel that it's taken you deep enough, but that's what we'll do in today's class, right? It takes about 10 minutes to entrain your brain waves to a specific frequency. So you need 10 minutes anyway to entrain your brain waves. And then it takes between 5 to 20 minutes to induce a trance state in susceptible persons, right? So that's how we get the figure of up to 30 minutes, right? 10 minutes for the brain waves and up to 20 minutes to induce the trance state. Yeah. So I've got a little bit of instructions here, so I'll come to that in just a moment, but I'm going to first ask you to get comfortable to be able to listen to this drumming. There is going to be no video. I mean, there is just a picture, no changes in that video. So there's nothing for you to watch unless you enjoy watching YouTube progress. Yeah, so, get as comfortable as you would like. That will support you to move into a slightly altered state where we're not probably going to expect in trance, because as I said, it's practice. For most people, it's practice. So for those of you who have or regularly are able to drop into a trance state, you've already been practicing this. So you may be able to drop into trance. But those of you who haven't done much of that or nothing, then this might not, you're going to have a very different experience. I'm not sure what it will be yet, right? It'll just be a different experience. As in all cases, if you're having an adverse experience, turn the sound off. All right, just turn the sound off or turn it down if it doesn't feel too much. And you can pop a message in the chat to me, direct message. I might not see it straight away because of the multiple screen things, but I will see it and I will know, right, to check in with you after, at least when the drumming track has ended. You can always walk away if you need to go and have a walk, all right? It'll be 15 minutes. Just come back in 15 minutes if you want to. All right, makes sense to everyone? So just be as comfortable as you would like. Rhythmic drumming is used in shamanic ceremonies to induce a state of trance, as we already know. During the altered state of consciousness, you may feel either energized or relaxed. Drumming ceremonies distort time and space. You may feel like you are leaving your body and journeying to other realms. You may feel pressure, expansion, or vibration in various parts of your body. Pay attention to sensations of movement like flying, falling, spiraling. You may find that your imagination gets very vivid and you might experience visions or a dreamlike state of mind. Keep your eyes closed throughout the recording and move as little as possible, but adjust your position whenever you feel uncomfortable. And when the music finishes, stay still and relaxed until I invite you back into the present. So bear with me and I will. You've noticed that the music stopped, but just let yourself come back gently into the space. There's no hurry or rush or need to move any faster than feels good for you. So just notice now that, you know, some of you have moved your body. How does it feel to have moved? And for those of you who haven't, how might it feel to just move a little bit of your body? That's right. You could experiment with that, you know, the figure 8 in your head. Yeah, the Indian head wobble. You could experiment with doing that little wobble. How does that help you come back into space and presence? A lot of people say wiggle your fingers and toes, but how does it feel when you actually move your head? And then you might want to wiggle your fingers and toes. Right? But I like that, you know, this, we have built into us, this figure 8 is actually somewhere in our bodies, and we can take that into our shoulder girdle and into our spine and our hips, any of those places if we want to, and if that's where our body is feeling like it's responding to that movement of that figure 8, that infinity symbol. There's a real power to that. It's not a power that we have given it. A power exists within that symbol. Right? It's because it's inside our bodies. We can do that and feel that. And if you haven't opened your eyes, maybe open your eyes now and just orient yourself to where you are, and whether you're upright or horizontal, just, you know, notice where you are. Oh. You can notice, if you like, you know, what's close to you, just what's proximal to you, just the floor around you. You don't even have to go beyond that, right? So if you've gone deep, then notice if that feels comfortable. And if it doesn't feel comfortable, then extend your vision beyond just the floor. Take it further out to the walls or the windows or the ceiling. And then notice, oh, have I gone too far? Right, I wanted some expansion, but have I gone too far? And then make an adjustment. Okay, so maybe it's, you know, like half a meter, a couple of feet distance I want to create and look around to. Yeah. So is there anything anybody want to share about that experience or ask a question about?
I found it interesting. I don't know how long it was, but it was interesting that my brain was a bit busy and off on a topic, but it was all of a sudden when it stopped doing the thinking and it just came in, it's like, oh, that must be the time when the brain, when you had said, you know, the brain takes a certain amount of time to orient. It's like, oh, cool, that was oriented. So yeah. it just gave me less word, I don't know, not even concern or whatever the light word would be, that my mind was busy. That just went away. It just sort of made sense now that we had the sort of for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Does anyone else notice that something shifted, like less of the mind chatter kind of came in, and it probably was around the 10-minute mark? Yeah. I mean, even I noticed that, and I wasn't going deeply into it. I was keeping an eye out on you and the time and stuff, and I noticed that even my mind chatter started dropping away a little earlier, and by the 10 minutes it was like, oh yeah, there it is, it's about there.
I had my hand on my diaphragm while I was lying down, and And the number of releases that, I mean, I was like a gurgling factory the whole time, energy just kept popping up, and it felt so good to get it out. It's great.
So you're I can hear you, Christy, but it's like you're a bit muffled at times. So just if you can talk a little slower for your mic, perhaps, and I'll mute my mic as well, because we know that could be part of the problem. And maybe you can, I did catch most of it, but could you try saying some important parts again?
Sure. So I had my hand on my diaphragm, and I noticed that it was like a constant gurgle of releases, and it felt amazing to get all the energy out. And at one point I I actually had some of the shaking that I have happen when I have body work done, or nervous system body work done. And so I was thinking to myself, I didn't realize I could use sound to get this to happen. So I want to add it to my toolbox.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great that was that supported you to have those releases. And yeah, I mean, we often see them in body work and various other things, and it's great and sometimes through induced tremoring, those sorts of practices. Yeah, it's good that the sound will, and I actually find, so when I go to sound healings, I've discovered that particularly gongs, so like different sound healings have different effects on me. And I've noticed that particularly with gongs, like those really big things, really big gongs, I don't have pain for 3 days at all, like no pain in my body at all for 3 days, right? Which is that's a bit unusual. I always have something usually going on. And the gong work just, it's gone. So we are very attuned, our bodies really respond to sound in different ways, obviously, but they do. So great that you had such a strong and beneficial effect. Thank you. Yeah, resonant beings for sure. Yes, Candy. Welcome back, by the way.
Thank you. I was a little bit similar. I had a lot of physical sensations, especially around my lower abdomen. So I just noticed I was more present with my body, which was nice. But just in general, really enjoyed this class. It's really, a whole lot has really kind of sunk in and feels really relevant, especially with the, just being reminded of these concepts of like the liminal space and how that related to me traveling and then being in that state and then now being home and kind of making space to receive all of the wisdom. And I think what you said about being able to hold the duality of going into these states, but also knowing that we're, not fully leaving and being able to kind of ride that as well, came up for me again during that journey. So lots of things are just kind of landing, I guess, in a different way. So yeah.
And you speak about that, like often when I talk to channels, and you've probably heard other channels say the same thing too, is they say that it's like when they're channeling, it's like their consciousness moves to the back of the room is how they often describe it. So they say they're still present, but they don't really have, like, they can't really speak from that part of them because it's way at the back of the room, and the entity or energy that they're channeling is taking up the rest of the space. But if they needed to, they could just bring it forward if it were, if they needed to. And so I feel like it's very, very much like the shamanic process of staying in both worlds. You're active in the other world to receive the gifts and the benefits and the help, but you are also present but just in a much more kind of stepping back, as Stephanie has just said, relaxed way. And yeah, I think it's relevant to a lot of practices.
I definitely felt that in certain places where we were traveling, where, you know, I felt like I wasn't, like, for a moment I would go into and feel all sorts of ancient historical, I don't know what it was, but then I could come back and Craig's like, "You okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine, but I'm feeling a lot here," kind of thing. So I definitely think that was happening, which feels like it removes some of that fear of, even what Stephanie said earlier, of that fear of like losing control, going in and getting lost in that. And also just the piece around awe as well. Like, I think some of the architecture and the buildings and the beauty probably in a way helped me go into those states. So it just has helped me to kind of understand a little bit from a different layer what was going on, so I can integrate the experience.
Yeah, so, you know, we can, you know, say very much that travel is let's say an opportunity at least, and probably an experience of transcendence. And you know, it's, again, that's not just I mean, it's contemporary, and perhaps that, you know, it's only several centuries of that being a fashionable thing to travel and have your experience of other parts of the world, travel the New World, or go on the great, what was it called? The Grand Tour or something like that, it was called, where people, that would be one of their rites of passage. And certainly, you know, certainly for Antipodeans, it's very much a rite of passage to go traveling around the world. And we, you know, there we are. It's because it's an opportunity for transcendence, moving your consciousness beyond the limitations of the ordinary, right? And your own reality and experience.
Thank you.
Oh, a girl put a seed up her nose. Okay, yes.
Now we got it out.
Oh, good. Good, it's all right. Yeah, thank you, Candy. And it is amazing how, you know, that the relevancy drops in from our own personal experience, and it just seems like that it's just become richer and deeper for you as a result of this recent travel that you've been on. Thank you. Anyone else? Stephanie?
I think travel itself is almost a form of liminality. Like, you do feel like you've stepped into another dimension when you're in a different place, especially when it's on the other side of the world or whatever. And yeah, so thanks for sharing that, Candy, because, you know, I think that's what a lot of people love about traveling, is that it does take them out of themselves, their own normal routine. You know, it gives you a different perspective, changes your the way you look at things. Like, it is a different form of consciousness almost.
When I travel, one of the things that I notice that is present when I travel and not so present when I'm at home is my physical sense of adventure. So when I'm at home, I have much more of an internal adventure process, and I might not even go outside my door for a long time. And when I'm traveling, I have a really strong adventurous side. Like, it's very, I mean, it will even be quite risk-taking. And what I'm trying to do is see if I can kind of bring that into my everyday experience a bit more, because it is a really highly creative and adventurous part of myself that I let go very internal when I'm at home, but I'm not interested in exploring, you know, like outside when I'm at home, because I do it inside instead. But that in a way is creating a kind of dichotomy or a polarity that I would like to integrate. Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts? And then we're just going to open it up to more general things. If there's nothing more, no more thoughts on transcendence, altered states, ritual, shamanism, ceremony, it will be kind of, you know, the last main time that we pass by on these subjects. Yeah.
Oh, look, I can't not say something, Ra, given that we met studying this very thing. Was it 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, actually it was 13 years ago.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was 2010.
Yeah, wow. 13, the one before 20. It's just been beautiful to reconnect in with this. It felt that drumming really did something for me. That feels like that's really woken up something in me that's been dormant for a while. And I realized that I've always used trance states as a way of, like, as medicine for myself. And one of the challenges in becoming a parent for me was the interruptions and not always being able to access that medicine, and then, you know, looking for shortcuts to that. But listening to that, like feeling the cohesion in my body and just a sec, the cohesion in my body and the power of the rhythmic. You know, it's just reminded me about that, and I would love to anchor. Hey, I'm talking. Thank you.
No, you're not.
I am. To bring that more into my life. Maybe there's some kind of rhythmic thing I can do as well with, like.
We can hear from you after.
Luna, do you have something to contribute on shamanism, darling?
I am.
I am.
Okay.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. Tara, did you also, I saw you and then you, oh yeah, there you are. You've moved. That's right. I was like, where have you gone? My screen's moved. And again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
First of all. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, it's just been really interesting. It was interesting on the journey, the mind chatter, and then all of a sudden there was a being making a fire. And I was like, oh, okay, we're here. And then I think I must have gone really deep and maybe even nodded off and gone deeper and just kind of let it do its work instead of me working.
Yeah.
And I like how you explained it earlier with what's in between. So if I'm working, it's, you know, mediumship was one of the first things that came on board, and it was just all of a sudden there's a blue sweater while I'm massaging someone, and I'm like, oh my God, does a blue sweater mean anything to you? So just affirmation on listening to the things that pop into the mind that just don't go away, that are irrational and have no meaning to me, but may mean something to someone else. And that process of just trusting that, or seeing the trance state with the Buddha was really interesting, because in ceremonies I'll do this whole shaking thing and almost like making space for that kind of oracle channeling thing to happen. So just trusting that more.
Yeah, great.
So it was a nice
I think that piece that you've mentioned around you know, trusting those impressions, right, that just arise when you're kind of like got your hands on somebody in particular, or in the space with somebody, and I learned that from Peter Levine. That was actually in his book Waking the Tiger. You know, that's actually what precipitated this whole journey into somatic experiencing for him, was because he was, as an undergraduate student, one of his friends or mentors, I don't remember which it was, I think it was a colleague and friend, said, oh, I'm working with this girl and you know, woman, and I'm really kind of like, when nothing's really helping, you know, you're into those kind of biological sciences, can you just like teach us some mindfulness or do something for her, right? So Peter Levine wasn't working with anybody at that stage, but his colleague or fellow student was kind of finding himself up against helping this woman. So Peter Levine agreed to, you know, teach her some practices, basically. And it was in that process of teaching, kind of bringing her into a little bit of a visualization, hypnotic visualization state, that he had this strong impression of needing of a tiger chasing her. And so he just turned around and he said, "Run, Nancy, run." And she'd moved into a freeze state. This was the problem, is that she was moving into quite serious freeze states, which was threatening her survival, like biological survival. And they couldn't work out why. She just kept on bottoming out. And so he had this impression of a tiger chasing her. And so he just yelled out to her to run. And then her little feet started going and all that sort of stuff. And it moved her out of that freeze, like literally dying collapse state, back into some sort of sympathetic tone. And she actually was able to complete the trauma and the terror that was kept on taking her into that near-death state. Right. So it was through that impression that he got around that tiger that actually really, gave birth to this, the somatic experiencing work. And I know, when I've had kind of those weird flashes with clients, they've always been accurate. I've kind of like, I remember one saying to somebody, "Oh, look, I'm just getting this random impression about a horse every time we sit here and we're talking about whatever. What's that?" And then she just proceeded to tell me that she'd fallen off a horse 10 times in her life and had all of these injuries and concussions that she hadn't told me about at all. And like it totally opened up, the trajectory of our work together, because suddenly I was aware of all these injuries that she hadn't mentioned.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing.
So yeah, it's really, I think it's it's great to trust those impressions.
Well, I like how he didn't tell her about the tiger. He just said what to do.
Yeah.
Like by seeing it. So that's a little bit of a different perspective than sharing the actual impression.
Yeah.
So knowing the difference, I guess, would be, I see a tiger chasing you.
Yeah.
Freak the person out more than.
Yeah, he really used that impression to take and facilitate the client's progress. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, to inform him what to do. Tell
him what to do, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Just a little bit of an add-on with that. All of the channeling that I do is very visual and very out of my, it's just very descriptive, but it means nothing to me. But what I found over time, that at the end of each day, when I'm finished my sessions, there's actually an altered state that I'm in. And I've started to realize that the resonance of the channel energy coming through is also healing me. And so that there's nearly always at the end of the day, journaling for me to do. And it has nothing to do with what their experience was, but it's the shared experience, again, I guess, of me running that through my body. And so that over time, I'm allowing more and more time at the end of the day to realize that I'm having a healing process as well as the client. So I don't know how others experience that, but it's that spaciousness of realizing that, trusting, and then also knowing that there is also something more there for us if we give it the time and space.
It's very, very common. I'm going to sort of like just broaden that comment out a little bit, Sybil, to kind of what I often hear from healers, for example, is, I'm so much better when I'm, just healing, right? So that all my pain goes away. I don't have any problems. This is like, so I'll give up everything in order to be a healer, basically, because that's when I'm in, nothing seems to be troubling me. So they're often using it as an excuse to not do self-care, or not take proper care of themselves, or not prioritize themselves in certain ways. And what I truly believe is happening in the healing state, as for the healer, is a higher, deeper state of regulation. So, and let's say organization. So the system, the organism, their body is more organized and more regulated. And of course, it's also open to co-regulation and supporting co-regulation with their clients. But even so, it is more organized and therefore more regulated. And therefore, all of that possibility for healing is more powerful, right? So that you can receive more healing when you're more organized and more regulated. So, you know, it's true when we move into those healing states, there is a lot of benefit to ourselves, but, you know, we can also achieve that simply by tracking more regulation and organization in our bodies at any time. We don't have to be going around helping people to be able to access those states. All right. And I think that's what, especially more inexperienced or newer healers will often come to that thing of, oh, well, I just need to do this more and more and more all the time, because I feel the best when I'm doing that. But it's actually just that they need to learn more about self-regulation, co-regulation, organization of their own being. Yeah. All right, so we have half an hour really to, let's say, do a bit of a check-in with some of you in particular, but with, you know, with most of you, a general check-in of, it doesn't even have to be about the course, but just how you are doing. Let's just hear from a few of you about how things are at this point in time. It's a nice opportunity to just connect on that level, and maybe we can bring some awareness of the nervous system while doing that check-in. That's all. It doesn't have to be anything particularly prescriptive, but it can be really helpful to just have some awareness of your body or your nervous system while feeling into what else is going on, or feeling into what is going on. Is there anyone who would like to start with that? We probably won't have a chance to hear from everyone given the time, but maybe those who haven't spoken, if you're feeling able. Ryan?
Hello.
Hi.
How am I feeling? Well, I've been feeling pretty stuck over the last 2 months, in a powerless sort of situation. And I think it's the first time I've really sort of embodied what stress feels like within my body. I think I've never been aware of it as much as I have this time. I feel like I'm constantly like bracing. Yeah. Like my jaw and my clenching and like non-stop. Like even when I'm sitting and relaxing, I'll realize, oh, I'm sitting like this. Like my fingers are like gripping like an imaginary steering wheel of life, you know? And it's all just sort of clenching together. It's eased a little bit over the last couple of weeks because I've just been taking a bit more time for myself and having time off work and social media and stuff. That's really helped. But I guess what I would like to ask is trying to feel good, I guess, in uncertainty. Even though logically my brain gets that I will figure it out. There is always another way. All these things, like you'll always get it together, you'll figure it out. The logical part of me that is going, yep, you'll get it. But the body is going, well, no. This could happen, this could happen, this could happen. The body is anxious in some way. And I'm going in this state of like flight and anxiousness, and then into this state of boom, shut down and complete. I just want to like, so Monday to Friday is where I would hear the news of the thing that's going on in the background. And then on the weekend, I will not hear the news because it's not a working day. So then I sleep for 12 hours. You know, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I sleep. And then back onto Monday again, I'm like, whoop, like back on the roller coaster. And I'm constantly checking like emails to be like, oh, has it come through? Has it come through? Has it come through? Even though I'm not logically thinking, oh, I need to check to see if it's come through, it's still, my body is like in that state of like arousal. Yeah. So that's sort of like there where I'm at right now. Feeling good in uncertainty, I'm finding challenging.
Yeah. I think there's two pieces there. One piece is to find something for your body to do other than that kind of hyper checking. Is like how, you know, that's just a question piece. Is like what can be, how can that, you know, be stopped? What's a good way of changing that or shifting that around so that you're not in that hyper checking mode all the time? So that's just something to think about. It's like, do I do something else, or do I have limits? Or and I think it's a bit of both. Sometimes it can be, it's like, well, how else can I get my fix, or my, you know, or support the body to, you know, feel like it's, you know, it's satiated for a moment. Think about things in moments rather than all day or even all hour or whatever, right? It's like, how can I not do that thing just once in one of the times that I'm impulsed to do it? That would be the best thing. Just one of the times that I'm impulsed to do that thing, how could I not? Right? And not by just holding yourself back. Right? What would that look like? Would it look like making a sandwich? Would it look like going to look at the flowers? Would it look like getting a head massage? You know, whatever, right? What could it look like to just stop it once? So that's one thing. And I need to remember now because so the other thing is to think about, again, in moments, we have this tendency, I mean, it's inbuilt in us to move from, you know, a contracted state to an expanded state, from expanded state to a contracted state, right? So we pendulate quite naturally between something that's, you know, troubling us and something that feels good to us. And that's kind of a natural thing. And so how do we kind of normalize that at a time when you've got a lot of contraction? Okay. And one of them is to just, can you drop very gently and even for a short amount of time into a pleasant memory, but knowing and understanding that you will naturally move across back to contraction. So you're not trying to hold on to that for any length of time. What you're trying to do is just feed your system with these tiny little drops of an alternative. So that your system gets back into the rhythm, again, the affinity rhythm, which is literally picking up the contraction and moving across to the expansion, moving from the expansion back to, like, it's literally like drawing an infinity. And so there's no worries if you get across to the expanded memory and, you know, you're only there for a couple of seconds even. All of that keeps you out of stuckness for one, will keep you out of freeze for two, and will build your capacity to have more expansion. So it will do all of those three things, as long as you don't put a contraction on it by, oh, I've lost it, right? So you start out by saying, I might only get this for a second this time. And it's really natural that I'm going to pendulate back across to the contraction. And I may stay there for 20 minutes before I remember that, oh, I have an option, and how can I help myself go back into that option? I don't need to do anything really big. I just need to you can bring out physical resources, which is why we start looking at them at the beginning, but, you know, just a deep, pleasant experience, right? So this is when having a little book or a diary or notebook of some things with just pleasant memories, and they can just be body memories too. Sometimes I just drop straight into that state of how it feels to be completely free and traveling, and I don't even know where I am when I'm traveling. I just drop into that space of how that feels in my body. I mean, you know, like I've gone to places and not known where I was going. I literally arrived at a bus stop and just jumped on a bus and said, take me where you're going, right? So like, how does that feel? Oh yeah, there's that little bit of anxiety and what have I just done? And holy shit, I might just be arriving in China today, like that. So there's the excitement. I found the excitement. Oh my gosh, there was the excitement, right? And you can and that can actually take you forward.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense to you?
Does make a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you. Actually been doing that, not purposely, but been thinking of maybe old memories of times when I felt really safe and secure.
Yep.
As I guess a mini meditation in my brain.
Yes.
And then how that felt in my body for those moments. And then again, like you said, I would go back into that contracted state. The only difference there is what you said, is I'm judging myself for going back into the contracted state. Like I can't hold this energy for too long.
That's
I must not be doing, I'm not doing it
right. Yeah.
So, and then there's the other part to this, is that I actually feel more, I don't think the word is safe, but more, let's say comfort, bit of a comfort seeker. So more comfort in freeze than I do in anything else. Like freeze is like, oh, I can sit in this and just do nothing.
Yeah.
Rather than in flight, where it's like I feel like I'm on, but even though I'm on in freeze, I feel it in freeze.
Yes. Yep.
So it's like sometimes I'm hearing like, oh, I need to come out of freeze. It's like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Rather stay here right now until this is
more
over.
Comfortable until it's done. Yes. Yeah. So that is definitely about supporting your body to feel more comfortable with movement.
In freeze or flight?
Both. Yeah, so you want to be, because actually when you're in freeze, there's a lot of flight energy there. It's just that you've used freeze to disconnect your awareness from it, but it's still actually fully present. All right, so let's name that straight out. What's happening is that it's all there. It's just that you've disconnected your awareness from it, and then therefore you can move into a slightly different way of being with it. So slow, right? Slowing down that flight response in particular, and then really probably you're not having to slow down because you're actually cranking it up, but still keeping it slow from freeze, right? And maybe from freeze, you'll have a bit more energy actually, right? Because you're able to crank it up because it feels like it's down, rather than the flight, which you're feeling like you need to calm down, right? And that's when all of those kinds of controlling addictive behaviors can start coming in, when you're in that hyper flight, hyper focus energy. Other thing that could be interesting to try, I've never tried this, Ryan, so it's just it would be an experiment, would be, because you mentioned about hyper focus, and I'm curious as to whether if you decide to focus on a different sense, so allowing the hyper focus to come through smell, touch, or hearing, for example, taste even, right? You could really play with that. Support, you could probably, put a, eye mask on or something like that if you wanted to. I mean, I would. And not for long, but just to give your body a chance to adjust to paying attention to other senses, because I think what it's doing is it's shutting down all of your other senses in, prioritizing your eyes, the looking, the, checking emails, blah, blah, blah. And so, it's just of like, those other senses are not getting much of a chance to experience. And part of what happens when we get into flight is often our body's just like, everything's out of balance here. And so it throws us into flight. So we can say is like, the actual experience that you're going through may only have some influence on the flight response. The fact that you're channeling most of your energy in through your eyes and not giving bandwidth to your other senses could have a really big influence on that flight energy.
Beautiful. Okay. That's great. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think so, particularly as it's not typical. right? And it's really turning you a bit hyper. I would be exploring with that. Well, yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like what you're saying is like my antennas are sort of like out searching for the danger, looking for the emails.
Yes.
And really, if I take those antennas away and let the antennas go inwards.
Yeah, well, it's actually saying, in a way, it's letting the other antennae that you have also support you to get safe.
So the senses.
Yeah, that's right. So the other antennae are saying, we want to help. We want to help. Why aren't you helping us? And that's actually what's ramping. Why aren't you calling on us? That's actually what's ramping up your energy. Right? That's what happens with flight. It's flight energy. It's propelling you to do something, let's say. So we think of it as escape, right? But if you think of it as it's propelling you to do something, to take action, not necessarily, but it feels like escape, right? But it's actually asking you to do something, to support yourself in some way.
Flight.
Right? Flight.
It's asking me to support myself in some way.
Yeah. So, if I, really simple, and I know you'll understand this one, is if I fail to eat for too long, and it needs to be for a while, I can really just leave it for all day and go, oops, fuck, I forgot to eat. At some point, my body will throw anxiety, right? It's not anxious. It's pushing me to the refrigerator so I can go and eat something, right? So that's what's happening when that really intense anxious energy, and then you're like, oh my God, what have I done? Or what am I doing? Or how do I fix that? Actually, just go to the refrigerator in my case, right? In your case, it's asking you to do something, and that's why you're getting, hyper focused, because you're only focusing on checking. Whereas if you're actually bringing more senses online, part of your system, not all of it, because there is that hyper checking bit, but part of your system is going to go, okay, we have more resources now to be able to deal with the threat. It doesn't know that actually hearing is probably not going to be super helpful unless someone makes a phone call, but that's what your body needs to know. We know how to deal with the threat, and we need more resources than just our eyes to do that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I mean, this is a big one for all of us when those flight energies take hold. Understanding that, it's probably because the body's trying to help us feel safe, and we've neglected some of our resources, as in our physical resources or our physical senses. Yeah. So how do we balance that out? And, my suggestion to Ryan might not work for all of you, but I really feel like in his case is like literally closing off the eyes and bringing in, and some of that, comfort, that hedonism. And I know you like some of those things. So how can you make that a little bit of a hedonistic experience, and really just allow those senses to come back online? Yeah. Okay, thank you, Ryan. Anyone else want to check in? Mary, yeah.
I actually want to go back and share about my experience with the drumming. I really didn't want to come back. Felt strong. I didn't want to open my eyes. I didn't want to come back to class. I didn't want to, come back to my setting, to my environment.
And how are you feeling now?
Still, I don't know, it's a distinct emotional state, and I'm not sure. I mean, I kind of know, I think I know what I kind of understand it, but I don't know how to describe the feeling, really.
Sounds like you connected to the experience in a way where you felt more like yourself.
like it could have been a path to feeling like myself. Like, for sure it was distinct experience. I get, it was that experience of the demands of my life being absent for a few minutes. Both the external and internal things that are take a lot out of me all the time, right?
Does it feel like you really connected into your heart? Because I'm feeling quite a bit of stuff in the heart space. No?
That the experience,
or that you are, I don't know.
I feel like I perceive activity in my heart, movement.
But that's not.
I think maybe it's probably expression that's, bound up,
right,
or whatever.
Yeah.
And so now I think I think my experience right now is something like, I would call it like holding out, or like saying no was like the only way I can have boundaries, because my struggle with boundaries is my family. That's my kids. And not just little girl coming in on my class. That's like the least of my problems, and I have a teenager who always, all her life, it's been very hard to have boundaries with her. And I mean, it's a whole story, but so I feel that, I'm really aware of that. And so maybe I have this sensation, I'm just gonna hold on to this bound. I'm gonna have some space. I'm gonna hold myself in this space. I'm gonna have boundaries to be able to get some of myself back. And right now, as I speak, like there's I feel a lot more movement and some expansion saying it.
Yeah. I'm hearing almost like two things. There's the desire just to stay and remain in this state. And then there's this awareness that something has to change around boundaries to be able to have more of that state. Is that right?
Yeah.
And
there's some that there's like that, the relief that I had in that state was so dramatic. That's for sure.
So I was thinking, and I want to check in whether this is going to be helpful for you, or it could potentially be helpful for you. So I was thinking of actually consulting with Lou, because I know that she has, gone through recently a journey with boundaries and children, partner, and she may have something that she can share with you. Do you think that would be helpful? Would you like to hear from somebody on that topic?
Yeah, I'm definitely available for that.
All right. Okay. Lou, would you have something that you can share?
Oh, wow. I feel like honored to be called upon in that way. Thank you. Just to feel what's true and alive right now, like really acknowledging your soul, Mary, and the way that you spoke and shared so authentically just then. And I really deeply know the challenge of trying to offer our kids boundaries when we weren't provided with containment often, or healthy boundaries ourselves. And I feel like there's so much to explore around it, but to do justice to this moment, I would just want to honor you for being here and doing this work, because, you know, our brains, they develop all of our lives, but that primary development's up to 26, 28, you know. So you guys have got tons of time for beautiful healing. I'm really, excited to hopefully hear what comes for you as well, and chat more if you'd like to, for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. I'm thinking too, Mary, how you mentioned how you'd had, you know, quite a deep experience from the other journey too. So there's something, you know, that is coming alive for you, whether it's this flavor of work or whether it's just really your time for something to start to open and blossom, right? It could be both or either. But something is emerging for sure, that is asking you to pay more attention to in terms of this depth and being with self and giving time for yourself for that, right? So thank you for sharing that. It feels really sweet and beautiful, and wonderful to witness as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's like being heard and seen. I was feeling a little pissed off before earlier, and so that's shifted. I do feel supported, and I do feel movement. I feel the potential for expression. So thank you.
That's a beautiful way of saying it. There's a great potential that's coming alive. Yeah. Thanks, Mary. Anyone else would like to one more person? So this now is your chance for this time. There'll be more in the class after next week, because next week's another recorded module, and then there'll be more in the following 2 classes. But if there's something that you would like to speak to or about or share today, it's a chance for one more person to do that. Sasha?
Mine's kind of a little bit bringing in last week's stuff because I wasn't here, but I've rewatched the course. But it sort of was reminded, because I thought it might be something that might help Ryan with his stuff around the practice with the wool and making the space smaller and comfortable. For me, last week I had migraines for 4 days. I didn't end up watching the practice until Thursday morning. And one of the things that I was doing was I did the practice around trying to not like how I wanted to feel without pain. And that I thought is what I'd been doing, because I shut down, I turn off all the lights, I basically ignore the world because I get light vision issues with my headaches and stuff. I found that the only thing that I wanted in my safe space was my dog. I didn't want my phone, didn't want my computer, didn't want anything. And then when I did the expansion to how it has been, I realized I don't have boundaries on an energetic level, even though I physically look like I have boundaries because I'm in the house and I'm shut down from everything else. I energetically am still open to everything bombarding me. And the realization around that was that I, to be able to heal quicker from my pain, was to actually bring my boundaries right in closer and shut out the other things that actually cause that pain, which is the interaction with the computers and although I'm not consciously doing it, those things are still pinging in the background, and the brain's still going, oh, have I got messages that I need to check up on, and that sort of stuff. Whereas putting in the boundary that didn't include any of that technology, including my TV, which is what I use to help with white noise because of my other issues, I felt that it would made a huge difference to me to bring that boundary right in, to literally exclude everything except my dog. And that helped, like that realization helped me have a sense of releasing some of my freeze that happens, because I live in freeze a lot of the time as well. But there felt like, just in having that recognition of, if I actually physically make sure I have that boundary, I can actually move through it quicker. So maybe that might help with some of the stuff that Ryan was talking about with his situation at the moment as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Sasha. I'll actually address that because it's so important. And just in passing, but you can ask me about it in another class. It's very, very common to discover when people have pain that the reason that the pain is being thrown up is because they are missing a boundary, and they need a boundary from the people or the situation or some kind of distance that they're needing. So when there are no other apparent resources available to that person, they'll start experiencing pain, and it's often because there's no boundary. So what I was so impressed with Sasha's process is she discovered that through the actual string boundary exercise. Is she just there was no boundary, and she's like, oh, that's really weird. And I'm like, I know, I discovered that through my own process, but not through the string boundary process. And I'm like, that's really impressive, like how much that works when you're not in your head and you're really just letting your body show you that there isn't a boundary. Okay, so anybody who has pain stuff, that's certainly worth investigating, right? And you probably know that your boundaries are a little bit woolly at times, to use a silly pun, but I knew you'd like that, Ali. The actual string boundary process and understanding that pain is actually a part of the boundary making process, right? It's a part of the boundary making process for most people, I've found. All right. Ryan, I didn't mention the string boundary because you'd mentioned how overwhelmed you were, and I kind of made an assumption you probably hadn't watched last week's.
I did watch it.
Did you? Okay. So the string boundary exercise, I'm thinking, would be awesome. So that's how you want to feel, right? You
did that with the bracing.
Yeah. Sorry, you did it. You did it with the bracing. Yeah. Okay. So I'm thinking about how you can actually do it around the checking of your internet communication. So you could actually use that to, like, how would I feel if I no longer had to check, right? You can have that experience, right? It's all done and dusted. There's nothing you need to look at anymore. It's all fine. Everything's settled, sorted. That's what your boundary is going to feel like. And then you could maybe actually start to play with how would it feel like if you did it, like where would you put your phone, where would you put your computer, that sort of thing. I don't think you need to bother with the contraction part. This you could just literally, because you already know what's going on, this is actually to support you in establishing a boundary between yourself and those, the screens and the electronic media, right? So just play with that, see what it's like to boundary off your phone for a bit and just look at it, like, so it gives a physical visual impression of like what it is. It shows you, oh yeah, there's my phone boundaried off by all that string or the wool. Right? It's not about, oh, I'm only allowed to go in there or take whatever. It's literally just to create a visual anchor. You can do anything you like with that visual anchor, right? It's not supposed to make you behave in any particular way, but just to simply feel how it's like to have and see the phone boundaried off, for example.
Yeah, great.
Right? Because then your body says, I'll have more of that, thanks. Right? You don't have to tell it and impose behavior on it. If you find something that feels good, 100%, because we are totally comfort derived beings, we will go for what feels good. We will. So we just have to trust that and set up the circumstances with which we can best provide that to ourselves.
Comfort derived beings.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So next week is a video week. All right. It's we're going to be diving really deeply into the shadow of the helper. Right. So anyone who works with clients, that's the helper. Right. And obviously we've talked about that in the earlier modules anyway. Anybody who tries very hard in their family to keep everybody, you know, cheerful, satisfied, that's the helper, right? So you don't even have to be working with clients. You could have that, and you might have both of those tendencies, right? So this module is going to introduce you to some concepts about that. And then the following week, we're going to unpack that completely. There's going to be there might be 3 slides. It depends on whether I put it in the module or not, but primarily it's going to be an unpacking session the week after next. All right. And they're both related to that same deep topic of the helper. Okay, so we'll be looking at our shadow and all of those other parts of ourselves that we want to clean out now that we're able to kind of maybe look past all of the other kind of murky muck that, you know, we hopefully looked at in the earlier parts of the course. And that here we can shine a really strong light onto those habitual behaviours that keep us in that helper state that may be not serving our nervous system and our life and our relationships as best as it could. Okay. So thank you so much for today. It's been great to share this information with you and the experiences with you, and to hear how that's all going for you. It's been a fun module. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.